Welcome back to the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn Tierney from Insights in Automation, and this week on the show, I meet back up with Ramey Miller from Siemens to learn all about their new Unified Basic Panels. I want to welcome back to the show Ramey from Siemens, who has been on the show before talking to us about all of Siemens' great HMI products. And I'm excited to learn all about the new Unified Basic Panels. And let me just turn it over to you, Ramey. Could you first, for anybody who didn't catch our previous episodes, could you first reintroduce yourself to the audience and then just take it away and tell us all about these unified panels?
All right. Well, thank you, Shawn. Yes, my name is Ramey Miller. I've been with Siemens for over 7 years. I'm the HMI product marketing manager here for the United States. So all of the panel business sort of falls underneath my umbrella of knowledge and area to help make sure that everybody knows what we have and what the offering is. It's been great. We've had great few years of Unified being introduced, and today we're going to try to focus in on our newest kid on the block for the Unified portfolio, being the Unified Basic Panels. Before I get into some of the nitty gritty and the technical details behind the Unified Basic Panels, it's been a while since I've been on the show when we first talked about Unified a couple of years ago. And I really want to go back and reintroduce the Unified systems itself from just an overlay, and then we'll get into the details from there. So what we've done with WinCC Unified Systems and WinCC Unified is we introduced another platform of software features and functionality that help us address the changing world of the industry suite and the industry usages, right? So we went and looked at the complexity of going to digital transformation. We looked at how do we connect the devices? How are the interaction scenarios changing? How do we work well with other facets of the industry, being an IT department, or how do we work to get the data from our systems up to management or for reporting and dashboarding? So we know that the environment that our systems is being utilized in is changing drastically. WinCC Unified Systems helps us bridge that gap and takes us to that platform to support what we need to do moving forward from a product portfolio standpoint. There were some key areas that we really honed in to focus on with WinCC Unified. One being in the area of technology, we shifted to be more of a web technology based application. That means that we are more HTML5 driven with JavaScript's functionality, the SVG, scalable vector graphics, and we really wanted to make sure that it didn't matter what device you were programming for, core and basic functionality was usable and engineered the same way if it was a unified basic panel, a unified comfort panel, or a unified PC runtime instance. So all of your engineering and the technologies go across the board very smoothly within unified systems now. And that goes right into the scalability of things. We know that you're not always using the same project, or maybe it melds from a simple application this year and next year you may add more complexity or add more feature sets to your systems and you move to an advanced system of a unified comfort or a PC station. Unified can even support SCADA systems as well. It is scalable. The tools and the engineering involved is all scalable amongst these platforms. Openness was also an area of focus because we know that data flow is needed, and the ability to communicate to third parties, the ability to communicate to other mechanisms during runtime. We call that an openness functionality during runtime, and we just wanted to make sure that our foundation was solid enough to do that with security in mind as well. And then we keep ourselves on an integrated platform. Again, making sure that we play a great part of that digitalization expansion and the connectivity across your plant floor, so we can play OT to IT level very well with our unified systems in general. And that's really the foundation of where unified systems themselves generated it from, and where we created unified systems from an inception standpoint. So what kind of portfolio do we have? I'm just going to do a high level talk of, we are more than just a basic panel and unified. When we talk unified systems, these are typically core functionalities and features that play on everything. With the Unified Basics and Comforts and PCs, we can support a web client from any of those platforms. So that's a zero installation web client, meaning you're not installing Siemens software on those client devices. So we support web clients. We have Unified working in our industrial edge ecosystem, the unified runtimes for your PCs. So it can be a machine level PC application with the unified runtime project on it, or a supervisory or SCADA system overviewing your entire facility floor as well. The unified can play in that place as well. The unified comfort panels for your advanced applications, we've got a lot of different variants of the comfort. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the unified basic panels, which we just released, addressing simple applications, small isolated use cases in some cases, but the unified basic panels just help complete out our core portfolio for your standard applications. And then the other one that we sort of introduced about a year ago was the ability to do what we call the view of things. And this is actually using the tools that are built in within Unified Systems and within TI Portal to engineer a set of screens via drag and drop from the toolbar in TI Portal to create screens that you can host up on your web server of the 1500 CPU PLCs. So that really does allow another level of looking into the mechanism from the web server aspect and utilizing, hey, we've got a web server already on this 1500. I want to create a page in the user space. I can do that with Unified now, the same way I do for any of the panels. Just builds a bigger platform and portfolio support in general. And for those that are watching, it is just another way of showing we've got the view of things. We've got to round out the panel offerings. We've got Unified Comfort panels from a standard application standpoint, Unified Comfort Pros, which are fully enclosed IP65. Then we have Unified Comfort Hygienic, which are IP69 rated units that are washdown rated, certified for food and beverage or pharmaceutical environments, and then our Unified Basic panels as well. We will continue to expand on our panel offering to overlap and take the weight off of our other products that we had in previous lines. But right now, that is what we have from a panel offering. And then the WinCC Unified PC Station, which is using a regular IPC with a Windows operating system on it and loading a runtime application to those. So we really do grow everything from small to large on your facility floors, all supporting a web client type of interaction. So just to quick summary again, one standard visualization, right? We are engineering everything on any of these devices through TI Portal. So it's part of the TI Portal environment with the WinCC Unified software. We do keep our protection of the data very secure. We work very hard to make sure that you don't have vulnerabilities. So we are using HTTPS websites, SSL, and other user authentications to make sure that all of the data is communicated securely between controllers and panels, and even from panel to IT infrastructures through openness. So we have a lot of data protection in place with Unified Systems. And then that machine transparency again to allow you to optimize the user experience from any unit that they touch and work with on a facility floor. It's the same type of user experience to minimize your downtime. Now, getting to what you're here for today, the actual Unified Basic Panels. What is this new kid on the block? What does it entail? This is a new product line. It has 4 standard sizes. We went with a new glass interface on the front side of the screen. So you do get multi-touch on all of them, and we've got those 4 standard sizes. What do we get with the Unified Basic Panels that we weren't getting before with Basic Gen 2s that we've had in the market space for over 10 years now? We increased our performance and our system limits, right? So we went and said, hey, we need to make sure we've got the power and performance to do what we need to do in the marketplace itself. We know projects are only becoming more complex, and the requirements of our customers, what they're asking us to do with our systems, is also increasing. So we need to make sure we can handle that additional workload, but still keep with a basic functionality. We do get that multi-touch gesturing, two-handed operation type of interaction now, drawing a line of conclusion and usability from our smartphones. People are very familiar with how to use a smartphone, how to navigate through a smartphone. We wanted to allow the engineers to create user spaces and operator interactions very similar to what everybody uses every day. So that kind of interaction, the smooth operation of multi-touch, is also brought into this portfolio, where the predecessor was a single touch display. Going web technologies, again, we get the use of scalable vector graphics, so you can now see them on different resolutions with the web clients, but we also get a lot more flexibility with the dynamization or the animations that are done on the screen. You can do a lot more property and parameter controls. You can do font size, font color, you can do alternative background colors, foreground colors. There are so many properties listed behind every one of the graphical objects on here. You almost could get lost with it, but we do allow a lot of flexibility so the engineer can tailor this operator experience to look and feel the way they really want their system to look. We did extend functionality of the controls to give that better tailorization and customization of the system. So your sliders can look more like what you really want it to be. We have adopted the same image window technology that we had in the other window unified systems, which is it's no longer a flat screen where if you've got a series of buttons that you navigate with at the bottom of your screen, in the past, every screen in your project would have to have those navigation buttons. And if you ever changed the path of one of those buttons, you had to do it to all of the instances in your project. With the window imaging technology, we actually can just separate out those buttons to a separate window and you leave them alone. And that's one window you've got. It's sort of like a footer window or a header bar. You engineer that once and you manage it once. And then you're only changing the pieces of the screen that you really need to change for the operator to get the data they need to get. So this is an image window technology that we've adapted within our Unified Basic panels as well. Some that have played in the SCADA world or SCADA applications, that's sort of the way those have always been done. And we've just brought that kind of window technology down to our panel level as well. So now the Unified Basics and Comfort panels have that window technology in it. I already mentioned the dynamization or animation of objects, the flexibility to do so many things with the screens and the objects on the screen at runtime. It's almost a dizzy effect that, wow, every day I learn something new on what I can do with an object on the screen. And then the ability to actually use JavaScript to animate, to display, to evaluate information, data information at runtime. But don't be scared of JavaScript because you can still engineer the entire screen without writing one line of JavaScript. It is just the background scripting language that we support. So if you want to take your project to the next level and do multiple and sort of make some things dance on the screen, so to speak, you really have the option to do that with JavaScript, but we're not requiring that by any means for any engineer. We still have a very comfortable drag and drop from the toolbar to the screen and evaluation and assignment without touching scripting at all. So a straight comparison, let's get into that between the Generation 2 basic panels and the 4 brand new Unified Basic panels that are multi-touch. That's the first piece, is the multi-touch screen. We went to a glass face. And the other one that when you look at them physically that shows up right out of the box is there are no more membrane buttons. The basic panels of the old had a series of membrane buttons, key buttons that you could actually assign tasks to. We went away from that because we really don't see a lot of operators or instances of that use case anymore. Even our cell phones have gotten away from having a tactile keyboard on it. So now we've got touch screens to do everything, and our touch screen technology is good enough to allow a button to receive even a gloved operation, as we'll talk about. When we look at the resolutions and the screen sizes themselves, the Unified Basic panels are offered in 4 sizes, the 4, 7, 10, and 12-inch screen size. The naming, the nomenclature that you'll hear us say a lot about the unified panels is MTP and then a number, 400, 700, 1,000, or 1,200. That is simply multi-touch panel, and then the 4, 7, 10, and 1,200 is a reference to the screen size that it's associated with. So for those that when you hear or see these names, you can sort of get an idea of exactly what device we're talking about without knowing a part number. But the MTP 700, 10, and 12 with the 4. All of these panels have firmwares and operating images that, again, as we need to do security patches, we roll those out. That's all supported through TI Portal to do a system update. So again, keeping things secure as we move forward. But you'll see the 4 and 7-inch shares a screen resolution of 800 by 480, and the 10 and 12-inch screens share a 1280 by 800 screen resolution. So you get really good graphics and resolution clarity.
Ramey, you have a note that says that the images have to be downloaded separately. Does that mean that out of the box they don't have an image on them?
They are shipped from factory with the latest image that we had
Okay.
at time of manufacturing, but that doesn't mean that you could rev it or we've released a newer image. So let's say right now we're in the throes of version 19. We've got a version 19 image being released with the manufactured device, but let's say in 2 months we do an update to that image. We'll on our support site, we'll actually release an update image, and in your TI project, when you update your software, you'll have an option to essentially go through a change device and say, I actually want to use the version 19 update 1 image. And then you can configure that device to that panel image. So it can be, you can freeze it at the level that it's currently at, or you can continue to rev it up as you move further down in the software as well.
Some of our viewers may and listeners may remember this. When I first started playing with these, I thought image file. Well, that's great. I get a bunch of pictures. No, it's like a hard drive or internal storage image. It's not a bunch of pretty pictures. So that was my bad. But I like to tell that story because if anybody's out there thinking that it's graphics, it's not. It's the image of the internal storage, like when you image your hard drive. So let me turn it back to you, Ramey.
Right. Yeah. The image it is a different concept from some of our competition out there, and it's a firmware image build, right? So if there's a new functionality that we roll out, so from version 18 to 19, we rolled out some new functional feature improvements that were in the engineering environment as well. In order to unlock that improvement, you had to update to the latest image. So sometimes if you want to do this new functional feature, you would have to update the panel image to be able to support it. Otherwise, it wouldn't know how to interpret that control.
Now, let me ask you this, and this is for the newbies out there who haven't used the Unified Comfort Panel. When I update the image on the panel, does that erase any applications I may have downloaded to it?
The panel image would typically swipe the whole program off. Yes.
Okay.
It would. It is a separate. It will actually say when you go to download, if the panel itself has an older version of panel image than
Mhm.
what you have engineered for before it won't even allow you to download to it. It'll say, I can't download to this because you've potentially
I
engineered a
see.
functional feature set
Mhm.
that this piece of hardware that I'm connected to doesn't know how to interpret.
Mm.
So you need to update the image. They call it either image or operating system of the panel. You need to do that first and then download the project. And it would swipe the project off of the whole panel.
Okay.
But for those that have done a previous install, let's say you've installed a system in version 18 and you're
Mhm.
now maintaining the software in version 19 of engineering software, right? The TI
Mhm.
portal, WinCC version 19 now. If you look at the device information, it's still assigned to panel image 18. I can still download and engineer that panel as version 18. So when you define that panel in your software,
Mhm.
in the configuration, when you define that image version, we will actually clip the features that you can engineer to in the toolbar. In version 19, we added a new element in our engineering called a text box instead of just a text label. And if you have a panel image defined in your project that's a version 18, and you look at the elements to engineer by, you won't see a text box because it doesn't exist in 18. But if I change that device's image to a version 19, all of a sudden when I go to engineer a screen, I can look in the toolbar or the toolbox and I'll see this new element that I can engineer to. So we help prevent you from putting something into an older image that isn't supported. But this allows us to support installations that have been running for years. Um, if you had an installation at V18 and then you ordered a new replacement panel or a new unit you've ordered this year and it comes from the factory with a version 19 image, when you download it, it'll just say, hey, you've got a newer image on this device, but that's okay. It can still handle this older image you've engineered to.
If you get a new computer at work, you could
Mhm.
just install TIA Portal 19. You don't have to go back and install like, and I'm thinking about the original Comfort Unified Comfort Panel. You don't have to go back and install 16, 17, 18, and 19 to support all the different Unified Comfort panels you have out there. You can just install 19, and it's not going to automatically rev your panels all up to 19. It's going to work with those that are out there.
Correct. It will. If
Okay,
you've
good.
got even if you've got an archived project in 16, 17, or 18,
Hmm.
when you open those archived projects up, it will say, "Hey, I need to upgrade to V19."
Hmm.
You are only upgrading the engineering environment at that point. The panel images that were defined in those projects is preserved, and those images stay at the level that they were engineered at.
And it's always important to archive all your projects. Save
Yes.
early, save often. You don't know when you're going to need the original archive, so always archive everything. Now, I want to clarify because we're kind of really going to focus on unified basic panels, right?
Mhm.
Um, what is the minimum version? I think I know the answer, but I want to ask you, what is the minimum version to work with these brand new panels?
So these were released at the tail end of last calendar year when we had version 18, update 3.
Okay.
So we release a significant version almost yearly now with version 18, but you have to have update 3 to be able to recognize the panel images of
Oh,
the Unified
okay.
Basic Panels.
So 18, update 3.
Update 3 is your benchmark to start engineering with the Unified Basic Panels. And because we rolled in, it was really nice. We actually didn't have to wait for the release of version 19. We were able to release it 2, 3 months ahead of the version
Sure.
19 software because it was an update and because it plays in the space of unified systems, it was much easier for us to roll in this new unlocking of a whole product line without waiting for the big version release. So we were very happy about having this independence now of a big version. We don't have to wait for that. So as we roll out, I mean, even when we've rolled out the hygienic units and the pro units that were new part numbers in the catalog, those coincided with an update version within a version, not a not the main version of V18 or 17 or whatever. So we get more independence, but I know we stepped off there, but that is very important concepts to understand. Is we were very version independent, and when you have or you have been given an older version of software that's in an archive, you can always open it in the newer version. It will update it or upgrade it to your current version, but the images, if it's a HMI's OS image, the firmware image here, if it's the PLC firmware image, all of those are preserved at whatever you created them at. It's just the engineering environment. It's like saying I've got a Word document that I created
Mhm.
in 1999. It's still a DOC, but when I open it in today, it says, "Oh, you got a document here." Yeah, I can't, if I open it in compatibility mode, I don't get all the new features of the Windows document today,
Yeah.
but I still have the core window document. And that's what we're able to do with TI Portal. And when we rev our projects up, we're not losing what we originally created. We sort of open it, I air quote, a compatibility mode, but it is a um, it is a user friendly mode that says I can still support this and I can still make changes now with it and not have to do a major gut and rework of it. So we'll move on and just show a little bit more details on the resolution size, the displays themselves from the Unified Basic Panels, the Again, the 4 and the 7-inch share resolution. So when you're in the project, if you need to move from a 4 to 7, you can right click, change device, and it's your resolutions are already matched. Your screen sizes, your windows, they all match that um, that aspect ratio and the resolutions of those two devices. If you were to move to another device level of the 12 and the 10-inch, it does change the resolution and the aspect ratio, but we have resizing tools built into TI Portal where you can actually just grab these screens and right click and say resize to the new resolution of this product. And we will then we will adjust that aspect ratio and the screen resolution of that defined component to fit this new device. So you can take something that was big, a 12-inch display, and cram it into a 4-inch display. Now the objects will get very small because we'll shrink them down, but you can do that pretty easily within our system though. That's from the resolution side. From the physical standpoint, when you're working with an existing lines out there that have been basic panels of the years past, when you go to replace those with a unified basic panel, your 4-inch, your 7-inch, and your 12-inch, same hole cutout, no change there. Physically, it is a compatible hole cutout. I've mentioned a couple of times, we went from a 9-inch display to a 10-inch display. So you'll have to cut that one out a little bit bigger to fit the new 10-inch panel in. But cutting of a hole is a lot easier to do in a factory than actually shrinking the hole down, putting in fill plates or any adapters or anything like that. So we tried to mitigate the pain and suffering that people feel when they move from an old product line to a new one when that time comes. But we only have one that you have to really adjust the physical hole cutout for. So let's talk more about the performance improvements that we had. The basic Gen 2 panels had a PLC connection limit of 4. We've doubled that with the Unified Basic panels now being of 8. So we can talk to 8 different PLCs or have 8 connection resources used from the Unified Basic panels now. Again, just playing or working, building upon that openness and connectivity aspect that we needed to have with Unified as these systems become more complex and you're controlling more devices out there. We did increase our tag limits because we know projects are getting more complex. We're now up to 1,000 tag limit. Now, our alarms took a very significant bump in increase. They went from 430 in the predecessor to 2,100 alarms. This is significant because this allows an operator to get more information to reduce your downtime. So we found that if we can have alarms and the ability to generate alarms easily within our mechanism, then the engineers will present that to the operators or the technicians that walk up to these devices when they're in an issued state. And the more information we can get them, the quicker they can resolve that issue. So by increasing that significantly, we hope to reduce any downtimes that the systems may have in the future. And then from the data collection and archiving standpoint, we went from 2 to 10 archives. We went from 10 to 50 logging tags. Again, grabbing more data. People want to see an aggregate collection of data on these systems. So we wanted to give them a bigger storage container for that. Scripting itself, we now can do up to 50 scripts, JavaScripts executions on the Unified Basic panels. The predecessor had no scripting functionality. This is a completely new functionality that we've introduced to the basic line, our Unified Basic product line, because we know, again, the systems are getting more complex, and the ability to do simple scripts, simple evaluations or things with some scripting can really be the difference between you having to go all the way up to a more advanced level panel or keeping it down here at the basic level. Trends were never really, well, they were used, but not extremely heavily used on the basic family. So those really stayed the same. The trends per control, and the graphics, text graphics lists, all those really seemed to be sufficient with our predecessor. So we left those alone and kept our power and performance improvements on the alarming and tagging area. And then we also increased the number of tags per image that we can actually do and configure. And our objects per image, or the number of objects that you can configure in your runtime, is at 600. So a lot of good uses of our performance improvements, especially around the connectivity aspect.
When you say objects per image and tags per image, what's the image?
So the image is actually like the screen itself.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's a screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we can have, and then we've got different definitions of what a complex object is and a simple image object is. But one thing that's not really listed even on this chart is when we do a collection of objects, or like if you've got a text field and a gauge and a slider, or another, maybe it's a motor icon. In our portfolio, we call it a faceplate sometimes, or usually, like first step would be you have that collection of objects and then you group them together. So you've got a grouped object. And then if you duplicate that, you're now managing two different groupings of objects. But if you start to duplicate that heavily in your project, we like to say use a faceplate, which is a component of, you can make that collection of objects together, and then you call that instance of the faceplate as many times as you need, and you're just mapping the new tag information to these faceplate instances. Um, the power of doing a faceplate over grouped objects everywhere is, if you need to make a modification to that graphical grouping, you can do it in one place with the faceplate and then push that update to every use case in the screen or in the project. So if I've got, let's say, 50 conveyor systems that have a motor, a status, a run button, a stop button, and an error code, you can make one graphical grouping of those things and then make it a faceplate, and all 50 are called on your project at different times. Now, if I need to add another indicator light to that group of graphics, I can do it in the faceplate definition and then roll that out to everybody. I'm not having to go to 50 grouped objects and add that new element in. So faceplates is something we brought down to the unified basic panels as well. Moving on toward the user friendliness, again, we try to work with what is everybody comfortable with: smartphones, gestures, multi-touch. It's a very robust screen on the front. It is an IP65 front on these screens. The glass face is hardened. It's a tempered glass front. So it does take a pretty good impact before breaking. I don't challenge everyone to go take a hammer to them, but I would say they are very resilient to impacts. Like our cell phones as well are very resilient today than they ever been before. But with keeping with the resilience, we also have the ability to have glove operations too. We've tested amongst a bunch of gloves. We want to, and I've had some customers actually do real life testing of their own installations, and they've been pretty happy with the responsiveness of the screens themselves. We do have an anti-reflective screen on these. When you receive these units, they do ship with a very shiny shipping screen on them, or film on them. It's an edge-to-edge film, so you really have to look hard, and sometimes even have to pick hard at the edge of the glass face to get that screen layer to pick up. But if you pull one of these out of the box and it looks like it's just a mirror reflection of a light above you or behind you, most likely you've got the shipping screen is still on it. It should have a sort of a fuzzed out or a hazy screen reflection, but that doesn't affect the clarity of the screen image coming through from our display. We simply have an anti-reflection to cut down on the shop floor lights and other light sources that you'd be working around. Another thing we get with the multi-touch is the ability to pinch to zoom, two-finger drag. So if you've got a PDF document or a document viewer going on, you want to be able to zoom in on some things. We now have that pinch to zoom capability with the screens themselves, making it more user-friendly again. And then two-handed operation. Granted, two-handed operation, that's where you have one object on the screen declared like, I need the hand to push this button down, and that will activate a slider to become changeable for the operator. So it drives the operators both their hands to the screen. On a 4-inch and a 7-inch screen, it may not be a good application because, I'm sorry, my hands are big. I can actually span a 7-inch screen. But the 10 and 12s, it may become more of a good use case for you to put a button in the corner to say activate the slider, and the slider on the other side, and drives the operators to be in a safe spot on the screen away from any movements of things on your operation. So just two-handed operations are capable with unifieds as well. We do have a list of gloves that we've tested to available. So reach out to your sales representative, or you can take a look at this slide here if you get a chance, just for a quick list of the gloves that we've actually done our testings with. But I know we have worked with others, but these are the ones we go back to and say we authorize and say we're good to go with these. If we flip the unit around on the backside, I've talked a lot about the glass face interface and the multi-touch, but let's look at the backside real quick. We've got a single port gigabit Ethernet port on these devices. We are working heavily to stay with the industrial Ethernet aspect. So those are the protocols that we are focusing on supporting with the Unified Basic panels. We also have two USB ports on the device for additional peripheral or interactions or data logging, so to speak. And then we've got a reset button to put it into maintenance mode as well. Talking about the interface, the gigabit Ethernet port, we do our S7 connection communications for Profinet, Profinet communications, and then we also have other third-party PLC communication over Ethernet supported as well. Mitsubishi, Allen Bradley, Modbus TCP, we do support those Ethernet protocols as well through that same port. And then that is also the primary port where you would do your project downloads, your firmware updates, any other network access for IT department or interactions scenarios as well. So leaving a lot of flexibility with our connectivity. Our control panel itself did get a good redesign. If you've ever worked with our panels in the past, it sort of was, I would say, archaic in the way that you had to know what area do I need to get to in the control panel. We tried to make it more user friendly and optimized for the touch interaction, grouping the components in the functional areas, system properties, and things like that. You can also lock out a user from making modifications to the control panel, because with the user access levels now defined in TI portal, you can actually define a maintenance or an admin level user is the only thing that can do any control panel level changes. So if by chance the runtime application shuts down and they are left with the splash screen of the control panel, an operator is not going to be able to just randomly go in and change the IP address or make this system go into some kind of random boot mode or maintenance mode, or perform any other task that you have already set up in the control panel. You can have that functionality locked out with the users defined in your project at download. So, and again, trying to keep things very safe and secure for you. This is saying really that our panels are not only just a localized service from the panel itself, but it also is a web server. So if you can get on the network of that device, and you've got users defined in that project, with your other device being a PC, a tablet, cell phone, maintenance personnel, or whatever, they can use these other mechanisms and not need to install any Siemens software on it. You're getting an asynchronous access, which means that operator is going to see their own set of screens and interact with the system in parallel to the localized operation. Unified Basic panels are limited to just one single operating client at this point. The Unified Comfort panels can do up to two, plus a monitor, and then the Unified PCs can actually do unlimited client operation. But the ability to have an asynchronous remote client on our from our basic panels is something very significant, I feel. And then back to the security aspect of things, we really we can't talk security enough. It's especially when our systems are continually getting put on IT infrastructures, where external vulnerabilities can exist. They don't always exist, but we're no longer just an isolated tool or machine sitting on a factory floor doing our little program in our process all day long and never getting communications to it. The new infrastructures that are being implemented and introduced daily require better security across the board. So as we go with the all of our certificate handling for our communication, the ports that I mentioned, the USB ports, if you don't have a purpose to have a USB port be active on this through the control panel or even in your project, you can deactivate those and it will never detect, activate, or even try to recognize anything plugged into those ports. So we have a very good security measure put into place to deactivate ports physically on the device. And you can activate them back up during runtime too. So you can actually have that activation checkbox assigned to an admin level user in your project and have a screen of maintenance and say, I need to activate this so I can do a data dump from the panel. And you can do that. The security features with the updates with the firmwares, as we were talking about earlier, with the firmware images, the OS operating system images, those are all performed. The updates are all performed through TI Portal or the Somatic Automation tool. But that's also where we make our patches. So we're not invincible to vulnerabilities, but we do control this operating system. We do control the security measures that are in place to the best of our ability. So when anything comes up that has been either refined internally or has been brought up externally to us, we find these patches, we figure them out, and that's where we end up putting out additional firmware updates and things. So yes, you can run a system on an older image, but if you have an opportunity and it is available, I would always recommend getting the latest and greatest firmware image update onto your devices in the factory floor, just because we do keep updating security patches. Just like Windows likes to do their updates to your system to make sure your vulnerabilities are closed. When you connect, it's nice if you can help keep our panels up to date too, to cut down on your security vulnerabilities. And then we do have a full safety guideline available on our support site that goes through what measures should be taken, how do we recommend setting up your network systems, firewalls or port connections and things like that. We do have guidelines in place that you can refer to help set up a very secure system for your operation. And other tools and other accessories that we do offer, we've got styluses and keyboards. Yes, you can actually plug a mouse and keyboard into these unified basic panels and operate them through that like it's a PC station. But most of the time people are just limited on space and they run with these basic units and the touch screen. But you can put USB port devices for mice and keyboards in. Protecting the screen, it is hard. It is a robust screen. We do have other protective films available. We have non-reflective screen protectors. We've got essentially they're like tearaways that you'd put on a tablet or anything else. If you're in an abrasive environment and you're concerned about additional scratches from extreme cases, you can always put a protective on there. If you want to have antibacterial, we've got antibacterial films as well that you can put on to help cut down germ transfer. For those customers that are working to move from basic Gen 2 panel to the Unified Basic, we do have switching guides available on our support site. Those will break down, hey, I did this feature functionality in the basic panel. Does that exist in the Unified Basic panel? What's the best process to move forward? We do have some tools. It is not a right-click change device from the Gen 2 Basic to the Unified Basic. It will take going through an add-in utility that's free on our support site called Data to Unified, which will take the basic project of past and will condition it and then spit it back through into a unified basic placeholder in your project, where you then verify everything came through and re-engineer a couple of the pieces that may have broken. Because again, the screen technology changed significantly. So some of the screen navigations have been severed from the old to the new just because the old doesn't know about window technology. So we have to just reconnect those components. But the core graphics and the core components will come through your tag list, your connection list, all those pieces will come through with the Data to Unified tool. I do recommend reaching out to your Siemens contact, your Siemens sales or engineer support. They can assist you and help guide you in this process if you're interested in moving forward with how to move your old projects into Unified Basic. And then just to round out today's conversation, we've got different mounting capabilities. You can mount it portrait or landscape mode. So you can have different angles, and we've got different, just check the tech specs on the device to verify that you're within the temperature ranges, because any tilt of the device changes the airflow that we've designed for cooling of the device. Just stay within specs on that. But we can mount these devices vertically in a portrait mode if that suits either the physical restrictions or maybe your application just views better in portrait mode. We did allow for we tried to account for one person mounting scenarios. We've got little mini clips built into the backside housing. So when you have your cutout of our design of the designed size, if you push the panel into that cutout, we actually have little spring clips that will click into place to hold it there, so a technician can walk around to the other side and then put the permanent fixed mounting brackets into place. So some doors can be very big and you need two people. Well, we've tried to address that by having these little spring clips to help with a one-man mount installation. For those that look at the screens here or the slides, we do have a comparison again from the physical cutouts, the depth of the devices. We did not change the depth of the device. We actually made it a shallower device in many cases. So for those that are moving from the older predecessor to the Unified Basic, your depth issue, if you've accounted for it previously, you're not going to have to account for more depth with the Unified Basic panels. The 4 inch is the only one that went up by 3 millimeters. And then we've got the cutout size again. The 9 inch is the only one that has a significant hole size difference. But that pretty much wraps up what I have today. I appreciate the time today, Shawn. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be on the show today to talk about the Unified Basic panels and the unified systems in general.
Excellent. Well, I learned a lot just by listening to this updated presentation, and I picked up some things that I didn't know before. So I'm looking forward to jumping into this. If you guys don't know, we have our pre-order available over at theautomationschool.com for our brand new Unified Basic and Unified Comfort Panel course, which of course Ramey is getting me up to speed on. And Ramey, I really appreciate you coming on the show and giving us this overview of this new line. It was many years ago we did the original Unified Comfort panel, so it was good to bring the audience up to speed on these Unified Basic panels, and they look nearly identical to the big brother. So just a beautiful looking display. But thank you again for coming on the show and bringing us up to speed.
Absolutely. Anytime, Shawn. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I want to thank Ramey for coming back on the show and bringing us up to speed on the new Unified Basic panels. Now, if you want to get my course on the Unified Comfort and Basic panels, it's actually in pre-order right now over at theautomationschool.com. With that said, if you did enjoy this episode, please consider giving us a like, a sub, and a share. That is the fuel that keeps this show on the air. Also, please tell your favorite vendors to reach out to me to come on the show. I've been so busy moving into the new office that I've really fallen down on trying to invite new vendors on the show. So we may have a couple of weeks here coming up where we don't have a show. My apologies. It's just there's only one of me. So in any case, you can help me, though, by letting your vendors know they should come on our show. There's been some that have been on previously, and I've reached out to them to come back on, and it's like crickets. So with that said, I do want to wish you all a safe, happy, and healthy week. And remember, no matter what happens, I want to encourage you to stay courageous, stay fearless, and until next time, my friends, peace.